Okay, so we are now recording. So I'm just going to wave at the camera. There we go. I'm joined today by Gemma Butler, who is the marketing director at the Chartered Institute of Marketing, better known as CIM to many of us marketers. It's often thought that the CIM is a big sort of corporate organization who, are sort of, hidden behind, lots of walls, but actually it is full of people like Gemma. And so this is going to be a really interesting insight into kind of behind the scenes, if you like, of what is one of probably the most influential organizations in the marketing industry. So this is a real honor and pleasure to be talking today to Gemma. We're going to explore quite a few different topics in terms of things like where is marketing right here, right now? Because obviously as we come out of things like the pandemic and the sort of global crises across the world, things are looking very different for marketers on this other side. I say very, very positively, but some people don't necessarily agree with me on that one. So we'll explore that. But where we want to really lead this conversation is into the topic of marketing sustainability, which is one of the hottest topics, I think, probably in business as well as in marketing circles. So I really want to get Gemma's take on this, because this is a really, really super important one to a lot of us who have been searching really for the next steps to take businesses into this kind of brave new world. So we're going to end up hopefully there, but I want to explore a little bit more about kind of where marketing is at right now, because probably nobody's better qualified to kind of help us explore that topic than Gemma. So for those of the audience who haven't come across Gemma before, Gemma, welcome, and tell us who you are.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Gemma Butler, and as you've said, I am the marketing director of CIM, and I've been here, I think it's between 7 or 8 years. I think the last 2 years have made everybody forget time a little bit, but I've been here about 7 or 8 years, and prior to that I was at Sony and then Xerox, so kind of come through a sort of proposition development type route. And then I wrote a book, which we will talk about sustainable marketing later on, as you've said. But I wrote a book called Sustainable Marketing and set up a podcast series, and have had a real focus on marketing and marketing's role in society and marketing's role in business, which has just been amplified, I think it's fair to say, in the last 2 years, as marketing has been through quite a significant set of changes, really, and it's always been a broad sort of function within a business, but often at the end of the funnel, which is around selling stuff and advertising. But yeah, I'd say definitely since 2019, marketing has seen a lot of change.
So if we kind of almost sort of consider maybe this as then as a bit of a health check, kind of like where is marketing in terms of its kind of well-being and its health? So almost kind of treating marketing as an individual and saying, how are they actually feeling right now? From a sort of CIM and maybe, your personal perspective, kind of what would you say the state of marketing is right here, right now?
I think where marketing is right now is its position has been elevated. So pre-2020, businesses kind of treated marketing, I think, in many cases, as I said, as that end of funnel piece within the organization. And then we went into the pandemic, and we went into lockdown. Suddenly everybody's behind their screens, and marketing's position was suddenly elevated. And we did a study with the London Business School on their inaugural CMO survey, and 73% of marketing leaders said that their marketing function had indeed been elevated during the pandemic, as suddenly the businesses turned to them and said, how do we communicate? How do we keep our brand out there? Brand reputation is super important this time. It's all about engagement. How do we reach everybody and let them know that we're still here? So marketing suddenly became put into this position whereby brand and strategy, as well as the big communications piece, was kind of put out there, and they were seen as being that leading light. And then I think as we've come through into 2021, 2022, marketing has retained that kind of elevated position, but its remit is just expanding all the time. And the conversations I have with recruiters and the conversations I have with academics and with practitioners and with organizations, businesses need to need to recover. The landscape's evolving all the time, but the last 2 years have thrown up, not just the pandemic and the economic crisis, but diversity and inclusion is a huge topic of conversation now. Hybrid working is a huge conversation. Sustainability, as we've said, is probably the biggest conversation happening at the moment. And marketing is being seen to be getting involved, or a spotlight is being placed on marketing at the moment to get involved in that, through communication, through effectively talking internally and externally. Marketing is playing a role in organizational culture and almost creating that culture. What it puts out there is a reflection of what comes into the business. And yeah, I think it's certainly keeping a lot of marketers awake at night, that breadth of what do you get involved with, where do you place your focus. There's so much information coming in all the time. So I think marketing is in a really strong position. I was talking to Claire Kemsley the other day from Hayes, who you know very well. And, she was saying that, this is probably the year that marketing could put its stamp on what it is and what it does. And, we're going to have a bigger conversation around that. But absolutely, it's broad remit is being, I think, discovered again. And what marketing can get involved in now is bigger than ever.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, I can really reflect, in terms of my sort of coverage within marketing, of sort of saying, yeah, I'm seeing and hearing exactly the same. And I think it's an interesting sort of conversation to be had in terms of the big question ultimately, is marketing, finally hitting that top table? Because, I know when I sort of first began in marketing, it was very much seen as sales support, product development, kind of almost the behind the scenes kind of view of marketing. And as a marketer, it was kind of, no, back in your box, back in your place. Whereas now, from what you're saying, is it's almost being, okay, now we've kind of finally seen the value. So people across an organization finally seeing, oh, so that's actually what marketing does. So it isn't just the pretty picture coloring in, the typical old cliches of, marketing is just there to make things look nice. It is actually a much more of a strategic thing now, because if it is, supporting an organization to get out of a hole, or if, the industry that a particular business is in is finding it, everything is commoditized and it's very, very hard to do business. Marketing, it maybe has some of those answers because of the insights it's collected and, kind of its, inherent sort of strategic view. So are you actually seeing kind of examples of, organizations where actually now it is a proper strategic function?
I think we've certainly seen from a CIM perspective. So during the last 2 years, CIM has seen an increase in the number of people, marketers and other people within business, taking time to upskill themselves. We've always spoken about how marketing moves at such a pace that with digital primarily as that catalyst for that, as needing to upskill continuously to stand still. But having the time to do that is, when the world's moving at 100 million miles an hour, is really hard to do. But we saw during the pandemic that there was a big increase in the number of people prioritizing themselves and their own skill sets. So people in getting involved in our training, the amount of people that came through who decided they were going to do professional qualifications increased. And we're continuing to see that increase, as I think people are going, I need to protect myself and my skill sets first, and not get swept away with, the pace of change. And I think that for me is a good thing. I think, in terms of marketing itself, and what we're seeing in terms of the subjects, is there was a bit of a shift away from digital skills and upskilling in that area to brand communications and strategy. And they suddenly became the hot topics that breadth of general marketer started to come through. And suddenly there was less of this specialist marketer driven by digital. And we do a piece of work with an organization called Target Internet, where they have a digital benchmark, which I think over 9,000 people have been going through that now and taken this 45-minute assessment. And their last results, so they've just come out a couple of months ago, and their last set of results also show that digital skills have taken a back seat. They've gone backwards. And we filled in the gaps by saying, well, this is what we're seeing in that brand communications strategy the breadth of marketing is suddenly become the key point of focus. And whether that will go round in full circle as people suddenly panic that they haven't got digital skills remains to be seen. It's the big unanswered question for me. Where is it going to go? I have no idea. I'd like to hope that people keep up to date, they keep upskilling themselves, and they keep it, generally broader than going down those vertical routes. But whether digital and the pace of change of technology kind of forces that focus back on digital skills is anyone's guess, really. But I think, as we've said, alongside marketers then taking care of themselves, we've seen this huge swathe of marketers moving around. I think everyone's been discussing the Great Resignation. So it's an interesting time. I think we're in a big sort of limbo, but people are moving around everywhere at the moment, and people are, in the recruitment world, again, talking about what's happening there. The roles that we're seeing out there are for marketing managers and marketing executives, not SEO managers and PPC managers and social media managers. It's very much, again, that breadth and that general marketer that is out there. Again, will it change? I don't know. I think we are in that point where everything is kind of moving to settling, I guess, in the next year to 18 months to see where we land. I think it's a really exciting time to be a marketer right now. There's a lot to take on, but it's a time of change, and I think change is good. I know people are generally uncomfortable with change, but I'm really excited by change. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and this is really insightful, because I think, as an observer, and I would certainly say, I'm an observer of, these kinds of trends and kind of what's happened, and having been, in the industry for decades, you kind of do spot patterns when you start sort of stopping for a moment and just watching and sort of listening to how people respond. But that's a really, really insightful thing there about this kind of change and migration from being like digitally focused, which I think everybody understands. That's kind of how sort of 5 to 10 years of everybody wanting to know the latest techniques and double down on your SEO and your social media skills and things like that. Interestingly, though, I mean, I've noticed, obviously, with CIM over recent-ish years, although it probably isn't quite so recent now, this kind of migration of supporting marketers with sort of bite-sized chunks of learning and development. So going down the awards, which are kind of like modular, rather than big, lengthy kind of programs of study. Do you see, is that one of the ways that CIM would almost be able to kind of cope with this pace of change? Because if things are changing so rapidly, literally year on year, organisation like CIM would be really challenged to kind of almost keep up with that. So is this kind of modular award style kind of bite off what you actually need in the moment, rather than committing to a huge, lengthy kind of commitment for study? Is that kind of where you see the future of kind of marketing education going?
I think in terms of bite size and modular, I think that's how we as society like to engage and interact daily, isn't it? We all like bite-sized pieces of information. We all just skim things. We want short, sharp, tell me what I need to know in the headline. I know that there's a real issue in terms of people being able to focus longer and read long form and really get into stuff. So I think that's all happening, and that's being now filtered through into the learning piece. And I think it just makes it more manageable if you're going to commit to something like a professional qualification, to know that you can do it in bite-sized, manageable, it fits into your lifestyle. You can work-life balance and study as well. I think people like that. I think that takes some of the fear out of it, and some of, makes it easier, I guess, in your head to go, right, I am prepared to do this and I can do it. Interestingly, though, we have the awards, and you can do the awards as single awards, but most people still do the full qualification. Now, how they do that and the time period over which they do that it varies from person to person. But overall, they will do the full qualification, because that is the ultimate goal, is to get that diploma or to get that, that marketing leadership program qualification. So yeah, we're still seeing people going from start to finish, but how they do it is reflective of how I think we generally as a society live our lives, consume, with so much going on. I mean, I think it's sometimes just the noise levels are overwhelming. But yeah, it's certainly no longer about long, hard, hefty, time consuming education. We're also doing a number of intensive qualifications. So the method to do it through the intensive, so you can do it quicker in terms of time. You still learn as much, you still need to put in as much effort, but that time frame. And again, some people love that short, intensive burst of learning to get out to the other side, whether you're impatient or whether you just, time is of the essence for you as a person.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because again, you watch this over time and you just see that migration to the kind of almost instant gratification. Like you say, you still got to put the work in, still an effort, because you still got to learn. You can't just literally put the microchip in and suddenly you've got this download of experience and wisdom and expertise. You actually have to put the hard yards in. So, that feels fair, irrespective of actually how you do it. Are you seeing, I mean, just sort of thinking about this kind of speed of change and, the kind of the new way of consuming learning and actually, personal development. Are you seeing things becoming, really kind of sort of integrated in a sort of like, I'm going to use the word metaverse sense, because we see a lot of, this kind of blended, in the truest sense, blended kind of communication now being, a mix of digital, a mix of face-to-face, but then also this kind of AR, VR, XR, extended reality, kind of metaversey kind of stuff. Is that on the tip of the iceberg yet for CIM? Are you kind of looking into those sorts of things?
I think we've got our eye on those areas, but I don't think we are there yet in terms of engaging. I don't think people are there yet in terms of it becoming, it will grow into something. It will grow in, and it will scale. But I think right now, we're not going to leap onto something because it's out there. I think a lot of, I think with digital and technology, a lot of organizations do jump onto technology and trends that they're not ready for, but they're there and they're scared of being left behind. So I think it's about, looking at what's out there, becoming aware of it, being educate yourself on it, look at what it can do for you as an organization, and also training. I think we do blended learning. So we do face-to-face, although we haven't done it for quite some time because of, obviously, we haven't been able to. We do a blended learning, which is virtual and online. We do pure online. I think that fits to how you are as an individual. Do you like to just be on your own and learn? Have you got the discipline, I guess, to do that? Or do you like to be able to be in that situation where you can have conversation from time to time and ask questions? So we do the mix of person and virtual. I think we will absolutely be looking into that sort of that future, that metaverse type area, because it will at some point start to take off. So I think it's about being mindful of it and having your eye on it, but not leaping on it, because I think it can be very costly and very time consuming, and it could potentially become a distraction as opposed to a solution until not just yourself is ready as an organization, but your audience are ready to embrace that world. I think right now training is on an upward trajectory, and more people are training, and more people are taking the time to make sure that they are looking after themselves in terms of their career and what they're learning and staying up to date. And we do, continued professional development here, which leads to chartered marketer. I think if we were to throw something too far ahead in the mix, it could potentially scare people off, and they're like, well, I'm not ready for that. So yeah, there is a big piece of work to do, but we are absolutely have our eye on that meta universe space.
It's so encouraging to hear the way that you describe kind of what is good practice, because I've been saying to all of my networks and connections and everything for certainly a number of months, if not years. I've been saying this thing about don't jump on the next shiny thing, but be very aware of it. So kind of have it on your radar, look into it, critique it. But I'm so pleased to hear that you and the CIM view is that don't just jump straight in, just kind of almost take a watching brief on these things, and when the time is right, when the audience says, okay, now we're ready, then it's time to integrate it into your plans. I mean, it's just so great to hear that that's kind of condoning what I've been saying. So it's not just me saying this is a good idea and be like a sponge, absorb everything, but don't necessarily do everything. Feels like you're practicing that as well.
Yeah, and I think we've got some major hurdles to overcome before we'll jump into the metaverse. So I think a good marketing team needs to be aware and we can have a discussion around what does that look like. You know, there's so much going on at the moment around the bigger societal challenges we face. As marketers, we have to be aware of them, because we are, whether we know it or not, we what society do, we're the voice of the customer, we're the custodians of the brand, aren't we? What happens outside we bring inside, and what happens inside we take outside. So we've got to be educated, and we've got to take that time to understand. Not in, you don't have to go in to be an expert into anything, but just be aware of some of the things that are happening out there. So good marketers need to be aware. They also need to be good communicators. I think my personal opinion is we've completely lost the ability to communicate effectively. You only have to look at some parts of the last 2 years to see that communication is really bad. Even on when it's coming from governments down, it's even worse in some cases in that respect. But we need to be good communicators. We need to know our audience. We need to speak to them in a way that they understand, and we need to speak internally to the other functions within our businesses. And again, good marketers need to be effective cross-functional workers. As people often, when I speak to them, they go, right, what does my marketing team need to do? Where do they need to focus to be good? It's like, do they talk to the rest of the business? Well, no. Well, they need to talk to the rest of the business, because you need to join all of those different dots together in order to drive through what you're doing within your business. That's just as important as outside. And then finally, you need to be able to build strong relationships. And I think all of these things underpin everything you then do, whether it's around technology, whether it's around how you talk to people, whether it's your brand strategy. If you don't have those fundamental skills, soft skills, some people like to call them, then I think, you're kind of on the back foot to start with. If you can't get a room full of people to buy into your vision and your idea and take you with, you take them with you, and get them fired up and passionate about it, then, you're making your life a lot harder for yourself.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And I think if you can't do it internally within your organization, how on earth do you expect to be able to do it with a customer who you don't know as well anyway? And I think it all starts from the core, doesn't it? All starts from the team, if you can get that internal thing right. And it's a really interesting point that you raised there, because to me, when you're talking to other functions within the business, you've got to be talking their language. So if you're talking to the finance people, well, you don't talk marketing, because they're not going to get that. They're not interested. They want to talk finance. So how can you kind of spin the marketing side, which is related to finance? If you're talking to production, or you're talking to product development, or to sales, you kind of got to talk their language, haven't you? Which is much what the definition of marketing communications to a customer is, which is very much about talk their language, align your brand and your tone of voice with what they want to hear. Why is it, do you think, that we just almost like ignore that internally and expect everybody to understand marketing jargon and lingo? Because I think we do, don't we? I've often been kind of criticized as, oh, you're talking that marketing speak again. And it's embarrassing, really.
I think it's an interesting one, because I've been arguing recently that everyone keeps saying that, we need to speak the language of finance. But I think in some ways now finance needs to also learn to speak the language of marketing, because I think marketing talks about what's really happening. If you're a good marketer and you can take what's happening out there and turn it into something that's logical and has context and that people can relate to, then, I think take digital away and all the tech stuff, because I think they've created a whole new language for themselves where they know you don't understand what they're saying, and they like to keep it like that, because then they can move at pace and you can't keep up with them, and then they make their money that way, don't they, by talking in their own language. But I think other parts of the organization do need to learn the language of marketing, as well as marketing needing to learn the language of that. And I think by understanding that different side, I think maybe it's because marketers have so much going on and there's so much information coming in, they just don't get the time to translate it out into the operations, audience, into the whole sort of finance audience. But I think there's somewhere to be met in the middle. And I think within the boardroom, I think that's where that piece could come in. And what, marketing could easily just take what everybody's saying and turn it into that understood universal story or language to play back to everybody, because that's, we are naturally inquisitive and creative, and we like to understand behavior, and we like to understand what people are doing and why they're doing it. So we are kind of, I guess, the connective tissue within an organization, and also outward facing within an organization. I think marketing is a really, really important function. I think it's just got a little bit lost along the way by some organizations. But again, people go, what is marketing? Marketing is different in every single company, isn't it? In some companies, it is just the end of funnel piece that sells stuff, and that's all they want it for. And in other organizations, it sits at the absolute core of that business. And I think it varies. It varies so broadly. I think you've just got to find, as a marketer, where you're comfortable and where you want to be, and your options are endless, let's face it. And then just go ahead and get in there and just enjoy it.
One of those conversations, I think, that to me, I've seen and been hoping that this is going to really be at the top table, as well as kind of filtering down through every type of organization, is the whole topic of marketing sustainability. I mean, you could take the word marketing out and just say sustainability in its broadest sense. It feels like everybody everywhere is now, it's on their radar. Some people are actually really embracing it and saying, right, we can make some steps now. Others are just kind of maybe wanting to dip the toe in the water, but not really knowing where to go. Do you see, if we talk about, say, marketing sustainability here, again, using the broadest kind of definition of marketing mix, do you see that as being one of the real conversation pieces that marketing can lead in an organization?
Absolutely, 100%. I think marketing, if you take it back to how do we get into the situation we are today with regards to the environmental crisis and consumption levels being as they are, and the damage that's caused, marketing played a huge role in getting us there. Let's not pretend it hasn't. We have driven consumption levels through the roof, and we continue to do that now, although there is a lot more noise and a lot more focus on those that just do that without any sort of real thought for the end of life of their product or what they're doing to the environment. We've shaped consumer behaviors. People that go, marketing's not that influential. We shape most behaviors in society around consumption, don't we? And how people like to engage. We've used all the different tricks of the trade: free shipping, buy now, pay later. We look at the customer journey end to end through whether it's face-to-face or e-commerce, and we make it as smooth and seamless as possible. If there's only 2 clicks away, don't make it 3. We use everything we have to drive ultimately that consumption and that purchase. And with that comes unsustainable levels of waste, huge unsustainable levels of waste. And now, as myself and my co-author say, and all of the things that we talk about at CIM is, we have to use our powers for good now. And we absolutely have to shape new behaviors. We have to create new ways for business to work. And I always bring the circular economy into that. I mean, that for me is a really exciting area, because it drives innovation and it drives different ways of thinking, and it starts whole new conversations which shape new behaviors. And we also need to use our voice to not just tell you about our products and how amazing they are, but we need to use our voice now to educate and raise awareness. Social marketing, cause marketing, those things have got to come back, and they happen, but they happen in pockets of industries like healthcare, where, look at marketing done for smoking and obesity. But let's use those now for the environmental challenge, because that is a crisis, and that's something that, like health, we really have to take seriously. And I think we have to get back to the heart of what marketing is. So communication, brand and strategy, and it's something I just go on and on about all the time. If you can really take marketing and use its full remit of skills that people have that are in the profession, then we can start to deliver change, deliver what employees want, deliver what customers want, and deliver what society wants, because those needs of the stakeholder chain, the power's shifted. I think Edelman's Trust Barometer 2021, 2022 puts employees as the most important stakeholder, 3 times more important than shareholders. Society, when there's a big movement, society can change stuff, can't they? And I think, investors, sustainable finance is a thing now, and it's a huge catalyst for the CFO to now take notice of the CMO, because they have to get on, because now there's an investment at stake if you are not showing that you are absolutely looking at sustainability within your business.
So does this mean that an organization like the CIM is almost then sort of tearing up the old rule book and saying we need to redefine this, because it is really kind of flying in the face of the old model, the old definitions, and all of those, very, as you say, consumption-driven sort of techniques, if you like, that we've all learned and all grown up with? Are we now kind of saying it's almost like we want the inverse? We want to slow everything down. Circular economy is great because there is a sustainable element to it. But does this mean really for the CIM that it's kind of like we have to reinvent everything?
I don't think we have to reinvent everything. I think if you look at people, planet, and profit, we still need to be profitable, because you can't be a business if you aren't profitable. I think it's not about completely changing it. I think we've got to balance it out. So I would say it's, let's build into the narrative now that you need to consider people and you need to consider the planet. Earth is our biggest stakeholder. And it's about that narrative through business, where if you bring that in, and in my own role here, and in my personal role, I guess, of what I now am absolutely on a mission to do, is to educate people that business, it needs to change. It almost needs to be redefined as to giving back to society, which it always has been, actually. It's always been about giving back to society. But that got lost along the way when profit became the absolute only focus of the people that effectively benefited from it, let's face it. But I think it's a case of we need to balance, like everything in life. We need balance. We do need balance, and we do need to slow down, and we do need to consume less, and we do need to change our behaviours. And I absolutely believe, I have to tell myself this, believe we can do it. And I think we need to pull that focus away from profit. And I think for CIM, it's about having, we bringing in different subjects, just to jump slightly off sustainability for a moment. We've just created and developed and released a course on D&I. The interest in that is huge, because people want to understand it. Sustainability is exactly the same. These bigger society issues now, they're not so much we're redefining everything we do. We just got to change our narrative and balance it out.
That's an interesting one. I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually somebody I mentor, and she raised this. And Alice, if you're listening and watching this, thank you very much for the inspiration behind this question, because this is really, really good. And you knew I was going to be asking this one to pretty much everybody, because I said I would. She used the word unpacking the complexity. And I thought this is just genius, because I think for most marketers, the concept of kind of unpacking the complexity of this, I think, is really one of probably the biggest kind of blocks, if you like, in terms of taking those next steps. This is a hugely complex topic. If we just kind of go back to the core of kind of marketing sustainability, even the definition of it is difficult. I've been looking into this for about 5 or 6 years now as a concept, and trying to kind of get my head around the redefinition, the reframing it, kind of the prioritization of all the various elements within it. But she just beautifully described this phrase, can you help me to unpack the complexity? And I said, thank you so much, because that to me is at the core of everything I think, marketing teachers, CIM, any kind of sort of marketing leader needs to kind of really be focusing on. Is like, but the big question is obviously, how do we unpack the complexity? I mean, obviously that is probably the biggest question you're going to get today.
Imagine if I had the
that one, Gemma.
Imagine if I had the answer to that. I think everybody's different in terms of their journey and how we navigate this. I think our role at CIM is to support marketers and business in their approach and how they navigate that journey. And everybody's going to be at different start points. You have organizations that haven't even thought about it. Yeah, they're either because they haven't got time, or they're terrified of what it means for their business and how they will need to work moving forward, all the way through to those thousands of B Corps who are on that journey. And even B Corp themselves say, once you're a B Corp, that's just a start. Don't think that you've ticked all the boxes and you have to live that. So they're all up there, moving forward at pace. And again, you've got corporations who, sometimes I describe it as reversing into purpose. They didn't start out with the ethos of we're going to kill the planet. but they are, and they need to change. And that change is monumental for a business as big as a Unilever or a Procter and Gamble or something like that. And then you've got smaller startups who can start with that, you know, they have the benefit of starting leaner and sharper and having all of the information and hindsight that other companies have perhaps not got, so that they can move forward. So I think in terms of unpacking it, my first piece of advice would be, don't try and tackle it all, because you will just give yourself massive anxiety and your head will explode and you'll go, I can't do this. And it's, you know, I would say focus on, first of all, if you're a business, look at where your impacts are in terms of carbon and your carbon footprint, because they're probably where you can make the most effective change, you know. And that's as simple as where you get your energy from, how much energy you use, do you drive to work, do you walk to work, you know, all of those pieces. I think because, you know, climate change is the biggest headline out there, and that's the target that is stamped on everybody's foreheads of where we need to get to, and the implications of that are huge. So I'd say look at where your organization's impacts are, and then just tackle them in a way that's manageable so that you don't overwhelm yourself. As marketers, again, you know, marketers have got a real tough time, because with technology banging down your door saying you've got to keep up with all of this, plus sustainability, plus D&I, it's like the urge to run away and just get into a box and not come out is, you know, I face it all the time. Some people on my podcast I talk to, and I bounce home and I'm absolutely like, we are going to do this. And other times I literally just crawl home like Eeyore going, we are doomed. But yeah, I think manageable. Don't try and consume everything at once, because that's just not feasible. And have a plan and think about that plan all the way through to how you're going to measure it, how you're going to report it, and how you're going to talk about it. You know, until we start actually following up on some of the metrics and objectives we set ourselves and report that progress back through the organization, you know, people create a strategy and they create all these objectives. They don't really talk about them as they happen or where they've got wins. Everyone wants to wait for the big win at the end. I think with sustainability, you've got to talk about all of the small wins. You've got to talk about all the stuff that you aren't doing well yet, and almost have that list where you go, see all that stuff there? We need to change that, but we can't get to it right now, but it's on our list and we promise we'll get there. I think we've moved to this authentic narrative where it's about transparency and being open, and let's talk about the stuff we are not doing as well. And we've all heard about greenwashing, but there's also green hushing, which is a term that's coming through, which is where organizations who are doing good stuff are so terrified of mentioning it in case someone leaps on them about the stuff they haven't done. And I think that's, you know, within CIM, I'm about to go and do the GRI, the Global Reporting Index Standards course, to be qualified in that. And myself and another director are doing it. And with that, we can take a look at our impacts and organization. We're an SME as well. You know, we're in a small organization. So we need to look at our impacts. Yes, we're providing solutions to people and to marketers, and we're trying to inspire that next generation of marketers to come through with that sustainable lens on business and everything they do. But we also now need to go, right, we need to look at stuff, and we have started that journey. So we are a conference center and a hotel as well with it on our site. And we started that journey pre-pandemic of, you know, where can we reduce plastic, single-use stuff? What can we do with regards to being more sustainable within that sort of hospitality area? I think now, again, we are moving into that place where we're going to look at all of our impacts on that broader scale as well, and cover that. But we've had to do it in pieces, we go back to bite-sized and manageable chunks. You know, we can't afford to bite off more than we can chew with sustainability, but at the same time, we can't ignore it and go, it's too big for us to deal with, because we will never get anywhere if we ignore it.
I think what you've done there is you've just helped, I think maybe a junior marketer listening to this, I think you've helped to give a little bit of clarity there over the impact that they can personally make. Because I think, I mean, I've been, again, tussling with this one for quite some time. It's all very well being a marketing director at the top of the business and saying, right, okay, I'm at the top table, so we're going to do this as a project, this is an initiative, I've got the board sign off, yeah, we're just going to crack on and do it. But if you're a kind of a middle or more junior marketer who's got a real passion for bringing this into the organization, I think what you've just touched on there is really, really helpful, because if it's evidence-based and you can just do some little local quick wins in any of the new marketing mix elements, so it could be around people, could be around, as you say, carbon footprint, just little things that you can control. But if you can find the evidence of the difference that you've made, I mean, I'm going to ask the question then, is that the stuff then you bring back into the business or the organization and say, look, we've just done this at a small scale locally here in our team. What would happen if we did it across the organization? So if it's evidence driven, does that give you the opportunity to make those first steps?
Absolutely. I think, as marketers, if we're out there gathering information, whether you're gathering information at whatever level you're at, some organizations that I've spoken to, their whole sustainable development agenda came from people within departments. It wasn't from top down, it was bottom up, who didn't let go of the fact that change had to happen. And I think with employees now being the most important and powerful stakeholder, people are voting with their feet. They want to work for organizations and take this seriously. And I'd like to think that, people would walk away, and it's not that easy, obviously. In an ideal world, you would go and work for then an organization who did align to your values. And I think more and more people are doing that, and more people are looking for organizations that align to their values. So I would say collect that information. And as marketers, if you're a junior marketer, if you're a mid-level marketer, whatever level you're on, if you use your skills of communication and say, we're going to talk about this within our organizations, because the more people that understand it, and it's not just for marketing to change, the more people that understand it, the better. So operations, they've got, I know it's very complex, huge part to play around sustainability and supply chains. Leadership, if leadership aren't bought into it, it's really hard to drive change. But if everybody down below is this groundswell is coming up, then at some point they're going to have to listen, aren't they? So I think, you can be as powerful as you want within that space if you truly believe in it. Go and collect the information from outside. Go and look at organizations that are doing it really well. Engage. I mean, your podcast, we have a podcast, there's books, there's websites, there's learning zones out there. There's so much information, again, without going overload. Go and find the area that you're really passionate about and you really believe that you can drive change in, and start having the conversations. Just start talking about it and start driving that through. And, organizations are putting carbon literacy through their organizations. Carbon literacy training is becoming a real thing now, in terms of organizations are going through it and they're seeing the benefits. It's helping them understand what they need to do, where their impacts are, what those targets mean that are in the headlines all the time. I think those things, that's accessible to everybody, no matter who you are. I think it's a case of, you can make changes in marketing. Just everything we do digitally has a footprint, doesn't it? Absolutely everything. So go away and look at your website. I've set one of my team a challenge of how do we make our website greener? Look at your messaging. How many emails and stuff do you send out? Where can you consolidate? All of those tiny changes all lead to bigger changes. And I think everybody has a responsibility. I sound very, very preachy here. Everybody has a responsibility to make this change happen. And I think I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that it's going to have to come from individuals and society to get, the big corporations and governments to actually change. I think the bigger movements below are going to drive the longer term change. As I'd like to think that they do the right thing, but I think society is going to have to really, really drive this en masse.
Brilliant. I mean, this is such useful stuff. I mean, I can imagine somebody listening to this and thinking, I have to be tracking and watching and listening to Gemma going forward, because this is really, really helpful to me, because I've been struggling with the unpacking. I just want to keep kind of in contact with Gemma. How would they get hold of your podcast, your book? How would people kind of continue to track you and your work?
So we've got obviously the CIM website. We've got a sustainable transformation hub on the CIM website where we will keep things updated regularly with content around sustainability and sustainability specifically in relation to marketing. We're developing courses. We've developed the sustainable diploma, the diploma in sustainable marketing, which is out now, and we're going to be running sustainability now through the reviews of our other levels of qualifications as well. Also, with regards to the work I do on a personal level outside of CIM, like I overlap the two. So whatever I learn out there, I bring into CIM because CIM has that reach and that engagement, and it, you know, with everybody, and our network is so broad. So we have to share this. And then what I learn, I then take out as well. So I have the book, which I co-authored, came out a year ago now, which is Sustainable Marketing. And I have a website, myself and Michelle Carville have a website and a podcast series called Can Marketing Save the Planet? And within that website, there is also a manifesto, which yourselves are partners with us and signed up to. And we have a learning zone, which we keep up to date on a regular basis, which is really stuff that marketers can go to as a resource and start to learn and become aware. As I say, don't need to be an expert in things. You need to be aware. So we'll put stuff up there on the new regulations, such as the Green Claims Code. And Michelle and I did a webinar for CIM recently on what do you need to know as a business about the Green Claims Code? Because it's, you know, we read through it all, we digested it all, and then we've talked about it and made it, you know, it's a really important piece of regulation, which will, I believe, help businesses. It will hopefully take away a lot of the noise and help those businesses that are true and authentic and are absolutely wanting to deliver good, be able to, you know, come out, you know, above the noise, and really people will see those businesses that want to do good as opposed to those that are greenwashing. We have got just information there. So, you know, things like sign up to ed.net's newsletter. And that just, you don't have to read every single one, but those headlines come up and you might go, right, that's the area I'm interested in. But sign up to the right thing so you get the right information coming through. You don't have to sign up to everything. Just pick what works for you. Engage with the podcasts on the subjects that work for you. We cover a huge range of subjects, which anything from plastics alternatives through to, we interviewed Philip Kotler on his view of marketing and sustainable marketing and growth marketing. We've interviewed B Corps and, you know, all sorts. And then this year, our whole drive for our podcast is the year of action. And we're speaking to people who are doing stuff, and they are absolutely, whether that's advising, whether they've got, you know, businesses designed to tackle things like food waste and climate change and all of that. This is the year that we go, right, action has to happen. So yeah, I think I'd like to push that 2022 is the year that we start taking big action and stop talking about it, stop pledging that we're going to do stuff, stop promising we're going to hit targets. Let's start doing it and reporting on the progress of it. And I'd like to think that reporting for sustainability starts to become mandatory. I'm hearing whisperings, I don't know if you have, that it's looking like it's going that way. But yeah, let's stop people just reporting on the really good stuff they're doing. Let's report on it like we have to report on finance. You know, we don't only report when we make a profit. We have to report when we make thumping great losses as well. Let's do that with sustainability.
So Can Marketing Save the Planet is your next step. If you only do one thing as a result of listening to this or watching this, go and subscribe to the podcast. I've listened, I think, pretty much now to every single episode on there. I'm an avid fan, and I would say it is the way to become active in this topic. Obviously, as Gemma says, there's many other ways you can kind of consume the stuff, but don't get swamped down. I think it's very sage advice there to say, you know, look at the headlines, look at the titles, and consume the bits that you know are going to help you with quick wins. So I think, you know, we've been sort of really honoured to hear this really from, you know, the centre of CIM today. So thank you so much for your time, Gemma. It's been really useful, and I think, you know, for lots of marketers, I'll speak on their behalf in terms of this unpacking the complexity. I think you just helped us take those first few steps.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.